One of the things that hampered my father's career, in those days there was featherweight, 9 stone, or lightweight, 9 stone 9. These days there's super featherweight, which is 9 stone 4. And his best weight was 9 stone 4. But of course, for championship fights, you had to be 9 stone. Absolutely killed him, because he did fight at 9 stone, and he was so weak. He said he could hardly. That was for his last fight. He could hardly lift his hands up. And 9 stone 9, of course, the guys were a lot bigger. Although my dad said that was sometimes a bit easier, because like the Harry Legg story, who was a big guy, who was a lightweight, he could get out the way. He could move. He was much quicker than them. So even though the punches hurt a bit more when you got caught with one, he was, nimble on his feet and could keep out of the way. But as a featherweight, he was really weight trained and very weak. So that was one of the things that, maybe today with 9 stone 4, he would have been better. But, life turns out like that. And he always says that last fight when he was really weight trained, and he got a cut. And then the referee stopped the fight in the first round because of his cut. And he thought, right, that's it. I can't do 9 stone. My eye, it cut my eye. I'm doing photos as well. That's it. I'm going to quit. And that was it. He never looked back. He packed his stuff away, and that was the end. That chapter was finished, and on he went.
How did he know Mickey Duff?
Well, he knew Mickey Duff. I mean, I don't know how they met, but they knew each other from way, way back, from the early 40s. I think from when Mickey had probably just come over to England. And they were on the boxing booths together, and my dad always said, because Mickey always used to like to play cards and gamble, and my dad used to hate it because he said it was so hard earning that money and so easy to lose it playing cards. So Mickey was always off spieling and playing cards, and my dad was back home with his mother. he had rather a possessive mother, my father. So they went back a long way, and of course they boxed together, and then Mickey became a matchmaker, and that was it. Made a few of Dave's matches, and of course worked with Al Phillips, worked with Mickey as well, because Al Phillips was matchmaking as well and promoting, and they all worked together. Yeah.
They all fought with the style of David on their shorts. What do you think boxing was to the Jewish guys back in that day?
Well, I think it was certainly a sense of pride, something they could really excel at. And of course, there wasn't a lot else they could do. I mean, where else can you earn, in those days, I suppose it was £25 a night, legally, but you were fighting really, because I think Jews had a reputation, especially when you think of the time they were fighting, 1945, my dad turned pro. The Jews maybe in Europe that had just been rounded up and sent to Auschwitz and all the camps were seen as weak Jews, just being pushed, and whereas in fact, in a lot of the ghettos in Warsaw and Łódź, there were a lot of uprisings, but you couldn't fight back. There was no fighting back because you'd just be shot. But here you could fight back in the ring and prove that Jews were as tough as anyone else. For my father, he knew that education was really the way out. You can't fight your way out, really. So he did everything he could, sent me and my brother to the best schools he could afford. We both were privately educated. And that's how he saw the way of getting on, assimilating in the UK as well. Although him and both his parents were born in England. But of course everyone, they all had thick kind of East European accents, most of the grandparents, and so, you'd want to get away from that. Of course, and he wasn't born Dave Sharkey, he was David Sharkey, but changed his name for his boxing, and he not really for his boxing, he changed his name to try and get a job, because in those days they'd see your name and you wouldn't even get an interview. So it was important to assimilate as well. But however much you assimilated, if you were a fighter, you had your Mogan David on your shorts.
Yeah, I do think boxing is a mark of the migrant's journey, and I also think there's some really powerful symbols in the Jewish fighter, because you can place it culturally in between the Edelkeit, the Shtetl Yid, the sort of feminized Jew, and there's a lot of, I suppose, Holocaust theory around why so many Jewish men ended up in the camps and stuff. They didn't fight back, and there wasn't much of an uprising. So a lot of the Jews were coming from that sort of environment in Eastern Europe, where generally the religious men were studying, and the women were the ones who were keeping the accounting and earning money in the trade. And then on the other side, you had the reinvention of that. You had the sort of Zionist muscle Jew, and then the Palmach and the Haganah and everything that was going on in Israel. So I think the boxer, and there were a lot of Jews involved in boxing. It wasn't just a token thing. There was a lot of young Jewish men in boxing. I mean, the amount of people say, "Oh yeah, my granddad was a boxer," who were Jewish. So I think it was symbolic. It was symbolic of the sort of the cosmopolitan Jew, the Jew who'd arrived from the shtetl, or the previous generation had arrived from the shtetl into a city, and this was the thing that they did, and they were some of them were very good at it.
And of course it was unregulated.
Yeah.
You didn't need a degree. It wasn't the old school tie. It wasn't like you could become a merchant banker. It was all that was really open if you were Jewish. You could promote, you could get on there, you could be a trainer, matchmaker, all the different things. That you just needed a bit of wit. Look at Don King, wit, grit and bullshit. That's what you needed.
I think the Jews arriving in New York or London, it was very symbolic of their acculturation into the environment, and the partisan support, and the boxing venues and the training clubs, and the way how Jews were involved in all aspects of the sport is very symbolic of their engagement with the new society that they were part of. So and then it happens across all different migrant groups, Afro-Caribbean groups, and Irish and Italian, and it goes on and it continues. So boxing's always been fascinating for that, in that it's a sort of nexus point of all different peoples and ethnicities and identities and shifts that are going on in society.